Most employees and managers dread the performance appraisal process. It is just simply not people's favorite time of year, but it doesn't have to be that way. I'm Shari Harley. I lead Candid Culture. We're a training and education firm helping organizations all over the world help their employees be more candid at work and feel more comfortable doing so. We're going to spend about 15 minutes together, and we're just going to talk about the performance appraisal process and have it be simple and clear and not painful. In fact, almost painless. So first is this. Number one is to spend a little bit of time crafting an appraisal for your employees that is both detailed and specific. I'm not saying spend a ton of time, but invest enough that your employees feel that you cared enough to spend a little bit of time. That will go a long way to helping your relationship be even stronger than it is now. I suggest that both employees and managers keep a me file. So employees should keep a file for themselves where throughout the year they collect good feedback, projects, wins, anything that they're proud of, emails they received, and they should just throw it in a folder. And at the end of the year, the employee should send that to you, the manager, and you can use that to help craft their appraisal. You do not follow your employees around. At least I'm hoping and assuming you don't. If you follow your employees every day, everywhere they go, you probably need more to do. And I doubt that that's true. So you're not there all the time. So you're gonna need data. Right? You're going to have your data, but you also need their data and other people's data. So number one, ask your employees to keep a me file and collect their data on their performance at the end of the year. You're also going to want to reach out to other people throughout the organization. Call your employees' internal customers. You can call the people they service internally, you can call vendors, you can call customers. Anyone that people work with directly, closely, and regularly. And just ask, how has John Smith performed this year? What did you get that you needed? What did you not get? What did we do well, and what could we do better? You want to get something called a 360 point of view. When you get your employees, customers, colleagues, business partners, vendors' point of view, you get a complete picture of their performance, which is way more accurate than just your impressions because you're not there all the time. Once you have your feedback, you have your employees' feedback, and you have a casual 360 by calling around, you're ready to write the appraisal. You want to be specific and clear and not over the top with data. People cannot get better at 17 things. They can't focus on more than, let's say, 2 or 3. So think about you. Like, let's say it's January 1st, and you are setting your New Year's resolutions, and you're feeling optimistic. So you're going to lose 30 pounds, and you're going to go to grad school part-time, you're going to buy a new house, you're going to go on vacation twice, you're going to read 5 classics, and you're going to get promoted at work. No, you're not. There's no one who can do all of that in 1 year. And when the bar is set so high, people peter out quickly and they do nothing and they get discouraged. Performance appraisals are actually really similar. What are the 3 things that your employees did most and the best this year that are the most important? That's what you want to focus on in your appraisal. So what 3 things do your employees need to replicate that they did well, that you want them to keep doing, that is most important based on their goals and what's important to the organization next year? Focus on those 3 things. Then, what are 3 things the employee did that he or she really should do differently? Either what area could he or she grow or develop, meaning they've never done that, it's a skill that they want to get or take on, something they want to learn that's new, or something that really needs to get corrected or fixed. 3 things, not more. Now, I'm not saying you can't address more than 3 things in the appraisal, but I want you to consider that people can only focus on a couple things at a time. If you want your employees to be efficient, effective, get better, keep doing the things they do well, give them little things to focus on at a time. You can always meet again next month, or in 90 days, or 6 months, and add more. The other thing is this. I'm going to be honest. I worked in corporate America for 12 years before I started my business, and I was a driven, type A, successful careerist, and I did well. And still, I never had a performance appraisal where I didn't want to quit the next day. It can be a very discouraging process. And more so, I think employees, even if they hear 10 good things that they did well, and 1 thing that was negative, we all know that we go home thinking about the negative. So you want a process for your employees that they can really take in what you're saying, and they feel encouraged and more engaged, not discouraged. I would suggest to do that you really help people focus. You point out the positive and you point out the negative which is often called constructive, which is just a nice word for negative, but people do need both, but keep it simple and keep it pretty succinct and short. The other thing is this: the best feedback is specific. And I have to be candid, most feedback I see is actually useless. I call it Captain Crunch. It's like puffed children's breakfast cereal with milk. It's like moving air around the room with a little noise mixed in. So if you tell your employees they're doing well, they had a great year, they need to be more assertive or more aggressive, they need to work harder, they need to be more detail oriented, they need to be more complete, they need to be more accurate, they need to be more timely, none of that is actually feedback. That is fluff, right? It's vague. I call it an attribute, like a descriptor. Blonde hair, short, tall. Those are descriptions. They're not actually feedback. Feedback is a description plus a verb, meaning what did the person do? The more specific the feedback, the more helpful it is. So when I know exactly what I did well, I can replicate it. When I know exactly what didn't go well, I can change it. But when I'm not sure what you're talking about, I don't know what to do, and all I do is get really, really defensive. Human beings are going to get defensive when they get feedback, regardless of how well it was delivered and how nice and how softly. They will get less defensive when it's specific. When I can see, like almost like on a DVD or a video, when I can see the event go by, when you describe it to me so clearly that I can remember it, like, oh yeah, you're right, I was late that day. I remember that. I did turn that in late. I did take a vacation day on the busiest day of the year. I did wear something a little crazy in front of a customer. I can remember it. I'm not going to like hearing it, but I'm going to be able to absorb it, and I will get less defensive. So you can't prevent your employees from being defensive. When they get negative feedback, we all get defensive. I call that human. But you can reduce their defensiveness by being extremely specific. To be specific, you're again going to have to watch your employees' performance, and you're going to have to get feedback both from them and from other people, and that can be a little time consuming. I'm going to recommend you do that throughout the year, like I said. So throughout the year, just call your customers, your internal customers, and ask for feedback on your employees, and talk about what you're getting throughout the year. That's the ideal case. The performance review process is called review because it should be the year in review. It is not a preview, it is not a trailer. So ideally, when you meet with your employees, you should be talking about things you've already talked about. So a good appraisal sounds something like this. Thanks for coming in today. We're going to briefly review last year, the year that's ending, because we've had a lot of conversations about your performance. You know what's working and what's not. So we're going to wrap that up, we're going to review it, and then we're going to plan for next year. In a really solid appraisal that's empowering and inspiring even, you're going to focus a little bit on the past and a lot about the future. Now, you can do that if you've been meeting with your people regularly and giving feedback, and a lot of us have not. Let's just admit it, we are busy, we are human, and we have our own jobs to do. So sometimes we don't get to give feedback as often, as frequently, and as quickly as we would like. So you're going to maybe be in the position where you're going to give feedback that's not a review. In fact, the employee is going to be surprised and maybe a little frustrated because maybe it happened in January and you're addressing it in July or August. That breaks trust, so be careful how you do it. You may want to say something like, I've got some feedback for you. I wish I'd given it to you sooner. Next year, we're going to meet more regularly and I'm going to give you more regular feedback. But for now, I think it's important that you have this information. You can do that, but know that employees get a little suspicious, like, why didn't you tell me 6 months ago? And they can break trust and they feel a little betrayed. So be careful what you choose to address. If a behavior performance has been happening over time and you haven't addressed it and it's frustrating to you, you may want to just consider not addressing it during the appraisal. If it's really a problem, they're going to do it again. And I know that sounds a little crazy. I call that a missed opportunity. If it's an issue, they're going to do it again. Just watch for it, not like a stalker, but just pay attention. When it happens, address it. So far, we have gather feedback throughout the year if you can. Gather feedback from the employee themselves and also from their internal or external customers. Make some notes, be extremely specific. More specific, the more actionable, the more helpful, the more trust you'll build. Because specificity builds authenticity and trust. Vague does not. You're not going to write Captain Crunch, you're going to write behaviors. So rather than be more timely, you could say something like, turn everything in when it's due or before. Rather than produce more accurate work, you could say, check your work, be sure to spell check, have somebody proofread, and make sure that things are error-free before you turn them in. If you want to say to someone they have a bad attitude, that's going to create a lot of sensitivity and a lot of defensiveness. So you could say something like, you typically look unhappy at work. You're frowning, kind of throw stuff around, you're a sire, and it's creating an atmosphere in the office that's a little bit negative. My recommendation is, if you're upset at work, just take it outside and take a walk around the block. More specific, less defensive, more helpful. Now, the employee should also participate in their appraisal. So I'm going to suggest you do something called a self-appraisal. A self-appraisal is a time for the employee to sit down, think about his or her year and performance, and take some notes. They should write things like, what went well? What didn't go well? If they could do something over again this year, what would they do? What were they disappointed with? But get employees thinking about their year, because the more they think about it, the more accountability they're going to take. They're in charge of their performance, their success, and their career, not you. And that takes some of the weight off you. Also, I don't like to be surprised. So if I'm going to sit down and have an appraisal, and my employee thinks they're a rock star, and I think we should maybe possibly move them along and get rid of them, that is not going to be a fun conversation. I don't want to be surprised by that. So when I have their self-appraisal, asking them what they think their rating should be with comments that are specific, I know what I'm walking into. It also allows me to embed some of the employees' self-feedback into my appraisal of them, which feels more fair to them. You also, after you capture your feedback, you want to schedule a good amount of time to meet with your employee. Minimum of 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Schedule a time that's convenient for both of you, not on a Friday or not right before a holiday or a vacation, because people do get defensive with feedback, and they need to be able to go home, think about it, process, come back and ask questions. So schedule your appraisals maybe middle of the week, an hour when both of you have time. Now, the biggest mistake I see in delivering an appraisal is the manager does all the talking and the employee does all the listening and then goes home and complains to their cat about how unfair their appraisal was. I recommend that you have a dialogue. So here's my suggestion. Deal with one topic at a time. After you give the feedback on one subject, stop talking and ask the employee's point of view. Hey, how does that land with you? What do you think? And let the person talk, and then you go on to the next topic. Every conversation's a negotiation. The more your employee participates, the better the conversation will go. It will feel more fair, and you will learn something about the employee. So one topic, discuss. Another topic, discuss. Next topic, discuss. So I often sit and I observe my clients give appraisals, often when they need help or they're a little nervous. And what I see is the manager goes talk, 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 and they often read the appraisal. Your employee can read. Don't read them the appraisal. It's very impersonal. It's hard not to if it's in front of you, right? You're going to pick it up and you're going to read it. So maybe send the appraisal to the employee in advance, let him or her read it, and then just talk through it. But don't read it. They know how to read and it's not personal. Now here's the last part. This may sound a little funny, but I really believe this. The way you manage the appraisal process can build and strengthen your relationship, can actually build rapport. When you spend time drafting a really complete and thorough appraisal and a fair appraisal that's balanced, just as many positives as negatives and not too many of either, and you spend the time to deliver it, and you're thoughtful in your delivery, you have an exchange and a dialogue, you actually build your relationship. And employees want to work for people who have their back. The more time you spend and the more thorough and real you are with them and authentic, the more you build your relationship. So in tight economies, we can't always promote people or rotate people. We can't give people more money, but we can be someone who's great to work for. It's always hard to get negative feedback, but the truth is we want it, because without it, we don't learn and we don't grow. So I'm going to encourage you to be candid and have some courage. Powerful managers have courage and they're candid, and employees really want to hear what you have to say. A good appraisal focuses on the positive and the constructive. We tend to kind of weight things on the constructive because we expect things to go well. Again, I'm going to suggest that you're balanced. Give people time after the appraisal to think about it and invite them to come back to you with questions. People need to go home and have their process. I hope this has been useful for you. Good luck this year with your appraisals.